The Great Lakes St. Lawrence International Seaway. From locks and canals linking the world's largest lakes to engineering marvels lining the contours of the St. Lawrence River. A crucial marine highway defended for centuries.
Fort Wellington was built right here in Prescott. It successfully deterred the Americans from ever attempting an attack.
Shipping lanes formed by massive floods.
The waters rolled in, and 6,500 residents had to move to higher land.
And Quebec City's storied history, the final chapter on this great waterway.
Quebec City is the oldest fortified city in North America.
Now, we trace the secrets of the world's longest undefended border. More than 6,000 kilometers of rugged American frontier. Canada, over the edge. The Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway is one of the most famous international waterways in the world. It measures 3,700 kilometers from the Great Lakes to the open waters of the Atlantic. A series of shipping lanes, locks, and canals developed over hundreds of years. Starting from Lake Superior, the port of Thunder Bay is Canada's westernmost terminus on the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway. It is just one of 65 ports and harbors that make up this waterway, linked to 40 highways and 30 rail lines throughout North America. From Thunder Bay, vessels embark on an 8-day voyage east, crossing massive Lake Superior into the St. Mary's River and Lake Huron beyond. At the border cities of Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, we see the first of many engineering feats along this waterway. On the American side, the Soo locks were developed throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, with the Western Hemisphere's largest lock completed in 1968. On the Canadian side, a smaller lock handles recreational traffic. These locks are crucial, bypassing the churning St. Mary's Rapids that served as an obstacle to commercial trade for centuries. Beyond the St. Mary's River, the waters widen on approach to Lake Huron. Here, commercial vessels come and go, with the entire Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway moving a combined 160 million tons of cargo each year. Along the way, Lake Huron's scenic imperial light stations guide mariners along the shores of Manitoulin Island, the Bruce Peninsula, and the ports and harbors lining this great lake. At the city of Sarnia, the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway continues. Underwater, shipping channels have been dredged, allowing vessels safe passage along the shallow St. Clair River. Here, petroleum operations, chemical facilities, and a massive grain elevator line the Canadian and American shorelines, all part of a complex marine transportation network. And continuing south, a shipping channel across Lake St. Clair connects to the Detroit River and the open waters of Lake Erie. Here, vessels round Canada's southernmost point and begin a long journey northeast en route to Lake Ontario. But at the eastern extremity of Lake Erie, one of the world's great natural wonders serves as one of the world's great marine obstacles. Niagara Falls stands as a natural barrier between these two great lakes. Throughout history, 4 different waterways have attempted to bypass the falls. The problem was finally solved in 1932 with the completion of the Welland Canal. The Welland Canal stretches 44 kilometers from the city of Port Colborne on Lake Erie through the city of Welland to the city of St. Catharines on Lake Ontario. The canal features 8 locks, lifting vessels 100 meters over the ridge of land known as the Niagara Escarpment. These locks are 233 meters long and can accommodate some of the largest vessels in the world. The canal is crucial to the North American economy, with each Great Lakes vessel carrying a unique load. Enough iron ore to power a steel mill for 4 days. Enough coal to power Detroit for a day. Or enough wheat to feed bread to every resident of New York City for a month. Beyond the Welland Canal, the waters of Lake Ontario are home to some of North America's most industrial ports. The City of Toronto, the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway is considered one of the top engineering feats of the 20th century, linking the North American interior with the Atlantic Ocean and beyond. The Seaway has seen major technological achievement over centuries of development. But in that time, it has also seen great conflict. These waterways were the site of deadly battles during the War of 1812 and regional rebellions decades later. From high above, the city of Kingston stands as a legacy to those turbulent times. Kingston served as the base of operations for Lake Ontario's British naval fleet during the War of 1812. With the American fleet stationed at nearby Sackett's Harbor, New York, the area was a key battle staging ground. On Kingston's waterfront, Fort Henry is a well-preserved reminder of that military past. The fort's original structure was built during the War of 1812 to protect Kingston and the vital shipping lanes surrounding. The modern structure was built in the 1830s, charged with protecting Kingston's naval yards. The fort was never attacked and now stands as a National Historic Site of Canada. Heading northeast, the city of Brockville lies on the Canadian side of the river. Brockville was originally known as Elizabethtown, the site of a raid during the War of 1812, when 200 Americans crossed the river, freeing their countrymen and taking British prisoners back to America. Elizabethtown was later renamed Brockville in honor of the war's British hero, Sir Isaac Brock. Continuing northeast, we reach the border communities of Prescott, Ontario, and Ogdensburg, New York. Ogdensburg is home to just over 11,000 people, the only U.S. port on the St. Lawrence portion of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway. Prescott is smaller, home to just over 4,000, established by a loyalist soldier following the American Revolution. The communities are linked by the Ogdensburg-Prescott International Bridge, a 2.5-kilometer-long suspension bridge spanning the waters of the St. Lawrence River. This marine boundary was established in 1783 by the Treaty of Peace, signed by Great Britain and the United States. But this stretch of river was hotly contested during the 19th century, a key stopover for shipping between Kingston and Montreal. In response to fears of attack, Britain constructed a military establishment to defend Prescott, Fort Wellington.
My name is JP Howes. I'm a historical interpreter here at Fort Wellington National Historic Site. We're standing right in front of the St. Lawrence River. This is actually one of the narrowest parts of the entire river. What you can actually see behind me, all that land across the water, is the United States of America, in particular the town of Ogdensburg. And one of the gems along the coastline here is Fort Wellington itself. Originally built during the War of 1812 to defend against American attack.
The fort has been restored to its 1840s appearance, overlooking the same waters it was built to protect more than 2 centuries ago.
There was a large set of rapids between us and Montreal, and so everything was being shipped on little boats that could make it through the rapids. They'd stop here to be reloaded onto larger ships for the rest of the way. So to protect that absolutely vital trading link, Fort Wellington was built right here in Prescott. It successfully deterred the Americans from ever attempting an attack. After the fort had been abandoned by the British in a budget cutback, they had to come back in the late 1830s with the threat of rebellion rising here in Upper Canada. Once again, they were worried that a group of rebels, along with American sympathizers, would attack and capture Prescott, which was still an incredibly vital link in the trading system here in Canada.
But the rebellion failed, and Fort Wellington still stands, featuring an incredible collection of 19th century military heritage.
The gate itself is an imposing sight. And as you walk through, you get your first view of the blockhouse inside. It's actually the largest stone blockhouse in all of Canada and kind of looms over you. Quite impressive. We also have an absolutely lovely second floor on the blockhouse. That's the old married quarters, and it's been restored to how it would have looked when the married men of the Royal Canadian Rifle Regiment lived there.
The fort also features military reenactors, including the Glengarry Light Infantry from the War of 1812 and the Royal Canadian Rifle Regiment from the 1840s. But Fort Wellington's most notable feature may be its massive cannons that still point to the south.
Several firing cannons still here at the site, including this 24-pounder right behind me.
Worm, peace! Sponge, peace! Prime!
That's actually an original cannon, dates all the way back to 1807, and it's still fired today.
Fire!
Beyond Fort Wellington, we soar high above the contours of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway. Here, marine traffic comes and goes, moving more than 2.5 billion tons of cargo since the completion of the waterway more than 50 years ago. And this stretch of seaway, measuring 360 kilometers from Lake Ontario to Montreal, is considered an engineering marvel. Here, 7 lock systems guide ships past dangerous rapids, dams, and changes in water level. The Iroquois locks are the first in the system, lifting and lowering ships between 0.6 meters and 1.8 meters, adjusting to the difference in water elevation between Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence River. Further, we reach another technological wonder. This is the Robert Moses Robert H. Saunders hydroelectric dam. It is a power facility shared by Canada and the US, with both countries controlling 16 turbine generators, producing 900,000 kilowatts of electricity. The facility has been operating for more than 50 years, but did not come without controversy. In order to build the dam and the nearby lock system, the region had to be flooded, and villages along the banks of the St. Lawrence would be lost forever. These communities are remembered proudly on shore at the Lost Villages Historical Society Museum.
My name is Jim Brownell, president of the Lost Villages Historical Society, and we are at the Lost Villages Museum. On July 1st, 1958, 40,000 square acres of land flooded. Prior to that, 6,500 residents had to move to higher land. It was quite a dramatic time. A lot of sad folks standing around on that July 1st day, knowing that they would never see the land on which they tilled the soil, planted their gardens, lived their lives. But they knew that at that time, it was done in the name of progress.
The Seaway meant ocean-going vessels could pass from Montreal to the Great Lakes. And the dam would provide electricity for more than 1 million people. But they didn't come without a cost.
The Hydro and Seaway projects of '58, at the time, the greatest engineering feat in the world.
In the end, 10 communities would need to relocate to higher ground or to the newly formed settlements of Long Sault and Ingleside.
There were 531 homes moved by Ontario Hydro. Certainly a lot of turmoil in the area between August the 10th, 1954, when they started the project, and July 1st, 1958, when they blew that last cofferdam.
The Lost Villages Museum was established in 1977. The structures here help remember an event that looms large in the memories of residents and volunteers.
We have a museum site now with 11 heritage structures on that site, and all operated by volunteers. Just the story of relocation of towns, and just the story that you can tell at the Lost Villages Museum. When you can tell the story and impart that piece of history, I think that's the important thing that we do at the Lost Villages Museum.
Well, we started preparing to move in 1956. We actually made the move in 1957. And 58 was when the Seaway went through. We had a 2-story brick house, which was torn down.
For my parents and my grandparents, it was terrible, absolutely terrible. I learned very early in the 50s not to talk about it too much, not to show much enthusiasm for it, because their hearts were broken.
I was 12 at the time, and it was, I didn't really pay too much attention to it. I know my parents did. We didn't have a car, so we couldn't go to where the actual location was, where the dam was blown up. We went out a couple days later, and you could gradually see the water coming up step by step.
I love our 2 new towns. I love what's transpired in this area, and I like my friends, and I certainly wouldn't want to go through it again. I wouldn't want anybody else to have to go through this, because it's not very nice saying I can never go home.
But some of the Lost Villages' greatest mysteries are revealed below these waters. Filmmaker John Earl takes pride in bringing these images to the world.
There's lots of ways to learn about the Lost Villages and the history of what was here prior to the Seaway coming in 1958, but the coolest way, I think, is to actually get in the water and to see for yourself firsthand. Now it's great for me because I can, take images, still images and video and bring it back to people above who don't scuba dive. When we visit the different villages that were submerged, like Mill Rush or Maple Grove or Moulinette, we see foundations. The world underneath the waves of the St. Lawrence is magnificent. especially in this area, to go over foundations of people's homes, to go through lock systems, to swim over bridges that used to be above water and water used to flow under it and cars used to go over it. I mean, it's fascinating.
"100 kilometers northeast of the Lost Villages site, we move from Ontario and New York into the province of Quebec and one of the gems of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway. This is the port city of Montreal. Montreal has been a center of marine trade and commerce for centuries. Archaeological evidence says First Nations peoples inhabited this area since at least the 14th century, with Samuel de Champlain establishing a trading post in 1611. Montreal was incorporated in 1832. Shortly after the completion of the Welland Canal, a landmark engineering project that established Montreal as a major port city. Nearly 2 centuries later, the St. Lambert Lock and the Côte St. Catherine Lock are the modern legacies of that technological feat. These locks lift and lower vessels 4.5 meters and 9.1 meters respectively. And like their 19th century predecessor, they guide ships beyond the Lachine Rapids. Today, Montreal is one of the world's major inland ports, moving more than 25 million tons of cargo each year. The port features 3 international terminals, a domestic terminal, a grain terminal, and a passenger terminal, with nearly 70,000 cruise ship visitors stopping in Montreal each year. The port is also able to serve more than 40 million North Americans by truck within 24 hours. Continuing along the shores of the St. Lawrence River, en route to spectacular Quebec City, we veer east and inland to experience the wonders of southeastern Quebec. This is Parc National de Frontenac, a provincial park located halfway between the St. Lawrence River and the American border. The park contains lakes and rolling forested hills, offering both nature and adventure. The park is a sanctuary for 200 bird species and 30 mammal species, with some of the top biking and hiking in the region. Parc National de Frontenac measures more than 150 square kilometers of pristine beauty. Heading north, we reach the industrial town of Thetford Mines. Thetford Mines was founded in the late 19th century with the discovery of rich asbestos deposits. For decades, asbestos was used in the construction of buildings and Navy vessels, even Canada's own Parliament buildings. The town would go on to become one of the largest producers of asbestos in the world. But in recent years, the health hazards have become clear and production has slowed. Any future for asbestos in Thetford Mines remains unclear. "50 kilometers north, we return to the scenic St. Lawrence River. Here, kilometers of fertile farmland line the banks of the river as we approach one of the most beautiful settlements in North America, Quebec City. Beyond the canals and locks of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway, Quebec City lies roughly 250 kilometers northeast of Montreal. It is the capital of the province of Quebec, home to just over 500,000 people. It is one of the oldest European settlements in North America, dating back to the early 1600s with the arrival of Samuel de Champlain. For a century and a half, the French controlled the city until 1763, when Quebec capitulated, leading to British rule, following the Battle of the Plains of Abraham. Today, many buildings in Quebec's Old City stand as a legacy to that period, including La Citadelle, home to the Canadian military's Royal 22nd Regiment.
My name is Mike Cefaloni. I'm a lieutenant in the Canadian Forces, platoon commander, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion. Right now we're located in Quebec City. It's right on the Fleuve Saint-Laurent, the St. Lawrence River.
Quebec Citadel is not just a historic fortification, but also an active military garrison.
When the first settlers came to New France, they were responsible for defending the city itself from the British and the Americans. So before the Citadel, actually, there was just a lot of fortifications. And Quebec City is the oldest fortified city in North America. And when the Citadel really came about was after the Battle of the Plains of Abraham. It was built as a way to protect the city. And it was built right here on Cap Diamant because it has a view, a 360-degree view.
The Citadel is the largest British fortress built in North America and has been home to the Royal 22nd Regiment for more than 90 years. Along with standard military training, they carry on tradition with regular ceremonial activities. Today, Michael Cefaloni will take part in the changing of the guard.
The changing of the guard is a ceremony. It's a traditional ceremony. What you're going to see is the garde montante, which is the guard that's going on duty, will replace the guard that's already been on duty for 24 hours. And I'm the supervising officer. I'll inspect the guard, make sure that they're ready and well-dressed, prepared to take on their duties. At 9:45, there's the premier clairon. It's the first call. That means that the guards have to be ready. So prior to that, I'll go into the changing room, and I'm already wearing the pants and the Wellington shoes. But we put on the scarlet coat, and we wear a bearskin Busby hat. Now, the reason why we have the scarlet coats is traditionally it's a British uniform. What's gonna happen is the Sergeant Major of the Gardon Rouge, he's gonna come up and inspect the guard. After his inspection's done, I'm gonna come onto the parade square and carry out my own inspection with the Sergeant Major. And I'm gonna make sure that their uniform is proper, they're properly dressed, that they're ready to go. So after the inspection, the band will come out. They will go get the guard that's being relieved, bring them onto the parade square. And I've called a series of drill calls. Basically, I'm the supervising officer for the changing of the guards.
It has been 3 long days leading this ceremony for Cefaloni, but despite the intense heat, he says the traditions of the Royal 22nd Regiment are a key reason why he signed on for service.
We train a lot for this. We train really hard in the Canadian military. And for things like this, it takes a lot of time, dedication. The drill that we do is very precise, and it takes a lot of determination. So it really gives us a chance to show what we can do. And last December, after our phase training was done, we had to choose where we wanted to get posted. And I chose the Royal 22e Régiment because they have a lot of history. They have a very proud history, a lot of tradition. I wanted to be a part of that. Their motto is Je me souviens, I remember. And they pretty much, they remember the past who have fallen and all those who have sacrificed what they could for this country. And I just really wanted to be part of that tradition, and I thought, what better place to do it than La Ville du Québec.
From the Citadel, we continue northeast, beyond the boundaries of the city. On the shoreline, Montmorency Falls stand 84 meters high, the highest falls in Quebec, located where the Montmorency River meets the St. Lawrence. And not far away, the St. Anne de Beaupré Cathedral is considered one of the most beautiful cathedrals in the New World. Offshore, Ile d'Orléans sits 5 kilometers from the city. It was one of the first areas colonized by French settlers and has been called the birthplace of Francophones in North America. Further, the waters widen as we near the end of the Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway. Some 3,700 kilometers from its point of origin at the western extremity of Lake Superior. An 8-day journey by boat to the Atlantic Ocean and beyond. From the vast lakes and winding rivers of the North American interior, to engineering marvels like the Welland Canal and the lock systems of the St. Lawrence River. To the open waters of Quebec City and beyond. The Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway has been connecting North Americans with the world for more than 50 years. This great waterway marks milestones of technological achievement and centuries of diplomacy in pursuit of peace. Along one of the world's great maritime borders. Here on the edge of Canada.